Professional. I'm a professional at sucking ass! The Wii U Pro Controller. I have a bit of a beef with this thing, and it's only kind of come up again recently because I've been playing a ton of the Wii U, naturally. So of course I got reacquainted with this guy, the Wii U Pro Controller. Bit of history first. I mean, Nintendo and professional controllers go back as far as Nintendo and professional controllers. Here we have the Classic Controller Pro for the Wii. It's a redesign of the classic controller, and it released around 2010, I believe, to coincide with Monster Hunter Tri. And yeah, when you hear Pro Controller these days, I think you kind of expect a little something other than this, but hey, this gave you an optimal solution on the Wii to get a PlayStation 2-like setup for many of your games. Because that's pretty much what this was. You have the analog sticks down here, the shoulder buttons and triggers just feel very much like a PS2 controller. And that worked quite well for many games on the Wii, though not a ton of them supported it, especially on Nintendo's side of things. Nintendo's games barely even acknowledged that this thing existed. But it's obvious by releasing this redesign, Nintendo was confirming that, yeah, some people don't want to look like idiots. It's good to have options. If you're gonna have a wacky ass controller design, you can do that. But it's also good to make sure that if somebody doesn't want to use that wacky ass controller design, or a game doesn't really work well with said wacky ass controller design, you have an alternative. And the Wii Classic Controller Pro always felt more like a very bottom tier alternative. The fact that not a ton of games supported it, the fact that it was only $20 and plugged into the Wii remote made it kind of low on the food chain, if you know what I'm saying. Strangely enough, this didn't feel like an actual controller on the Wii, rather like a workaround to use a more traditional controller on the Wii. It was good to have nonetheless, but I was always hoping it would feel a little more substantial, you know? Both in terms of weight and in terms of importance. So the next generation, we got the Wii U Pro Controller. This was announced before E3 2012. I believe Satoru Iwata specifically said this was designed to accommodate for multi-platform games. Which is shocking. Yeah, this isn't enough for you? This is pretty much taking all the buttons, sticks, all that stuff from the Wii U gamepad and putting it into a controller design that's very, very similar to an Xbox 360 controller. Which was definitely a godsend, because as cool as the Wii U gamepad might have looked to you, you had to also admit it probably wasn't gonna work great for every type of game. And it brought up the question, what are you gonna do if you wanna play with multiple players and you don't wanna use just single-ass Wii remotes? Boom, the Wii U Pro Controller. And unlike the Classic Controller and Classic Controller Pro, this was its own entity. You didn't have to tether it to a Wii remote. That alone helped this feel so much more like an actual thing rather than like a contraption to create. Like, this feels more like a party trick than controller. So yeah, this launched right alongside the Wii U in November of 2012. You could get it in black or white for $50. Yeesh, that's pretty expensive, especially considering something like a Wii remote by itself was like $40. So this one better offer something. If I give buck, it better give me bang. Your games, your way. However you think of your gaming style, hardcore, old school, or purely nostalgic, the Wii U Pro Controller puts you in the game. It's really selling this thing here. Well, I bought the Wii U Pro Controller, I believe in late 2013. I think I bought the Wind Waker HD at Target, and I thought also, why not? I'll get a Wii U Pro Controller on top of that. And this is the one that I bought 10 years ago. And yeah, it's pretty crazy how well these kind of things actually hold up after 10 years. Look at this. This looks pretty damn good. Hasn't the past 10 years felt really strange? You know, like if in 2013, I bought something like a controller from 10 years prior, I feel like it would have felt like, wow, like this is all dinged up and gross and it's just aged like milk. Whereas most stuff I get from 10 years ago now A lot of it still looks pretty new. I don't know, it's weird. Well, looking at the value of the Wii U Pro Controller, it definitely had a far higher percentage of Wii U games that supported it than Wii games that supported the classic controller. Especially on Nintendo's side of things, a good majority of Nintendo's games offered Wii U Pro Controller support. In fact, it's really strange. I feel like more games Nintendo put out on the Wii U supported the classic controller, of all things, than they did on the Wii. They were starting to offer more options, I gotta hand it to them. But in this case, it's pretty stupid to not offer Wii U Pro Controller support. I mean, like I said, it's pretty much the exact same button layout and everything from the gamepad. Except this one doesn't include a lot of the fancy little doodads. No camera, no NFC touch point, no microphone, no speakers, no TV remote control button, no motion controls, not this completely useless accessory port, no IR blaster, headphone jack. Thankfully, this uses mini USB compared to the Wii U gamepad's proprietary AC adapter, so that means it's way easier to charge this thing. And speaking of such, the Wii U gamepad has about 5 hours of battery life, which equates to about 30 minutes. And Nintendo may say 3 to 5 hours on a single charge, but you know that ain't true. Well, the Wii U Pro Controller in comparison has a battery life of 80 hours. What the f***? How is that even possible? That's insane! And that's not even insane compared to the Wii U gamepad's battery life. I mean, like, have you ever used, like, a PS3 controller? A PS4 controller? Those things last minutes! This thing is a monster, and the battery doesn't even protrude or anything. They were just really able to get the most out of this thing. It is wild. And I feel like that's mostly due to the fact that this doesn't include stuff like motion controls, which I will say is definitely a bit of a downside here. It does give this thing a bit of compatibility issues. I feel like there are some games that, by and large, would have definitely supported this if it did offer a gyroscope or some kind of motion sensor. For example, at the launch of the Wii U, we got New Super Mario Bros. U. That did not support the Wii U Pro Controller. It was really strange because by and large, it should have. But there were a couple moments in that game that required you to tilt the controller. So I feel like that was the initial reason for not supporting it. Though a couple months later, I believe when the DLC New Super Luigi U launched, they did enable Wii U Pro Controller support. But that lack of motion did make it really weird for some games. Specifically, Splatoon. So if you were gonna play the local multiplayer in Splatoon, yes, there was local multiplayer in Splatoon, one player would be playing on the gamepad, while the other would be playing on the TV. However, Splatoon does rely a bit on motion controls. I don't think it's like super necessary, but if you want to get the most out of the game, if you want to play the most competently, motion controls definitely do help. The game was designed around just being able to slightly move your cursor around with the gyroscope. So the person on the TV, they could use the Wii U Pro Controller, though they'd be at a bit of a disadvantage compared to the gamepad user. So Nintendo had a solution: zip tie a Wii remote to it. Yes, this is an official image by Nintendo. This is the official method of using motion controls in the two-player battle mode in Splatoon, and that is probably why the Nintendo Switch Pro Controller features motion controls. So that's a bit of a problem, but that didn't stop a lot of people from saying this is one of the best controllers of all time. Fuck this controller. Okay, I'm always a bit harsh on this thing, and it's pretty much for one reason. It's not for any quality concerns. I mean, the buttons on this thing are just phenomenal. The D-pad feels substantial. I don't know how else to describe it. It just feels like every push you make feels like it matters and that you can't blame this controller on messing up in the game. It's just perfect. The buttons just have this great click to them, where it's not too clicky, it's not too soft, it's perfect. And then you also have the start and select buttons. These feel great. The shoulder buttons and triggers, also amazing. I do prefer the Nintendo Switch Pro Controller's triggers. These just kind of feel like they should be analog, like the Xbox 360's triggers. I mean, that's how they're designed. They look like the Xbox 360's triggers, but They're just on or off. I'd say it's more weird, if anything. It's not bad. Just kind of a strange little oddity. The sticks feel fantastic. Nintendo's sticks on the Wii U just have such a smooth feel to them. They have just the right amount of grip. They feel phenomenal. This is an excellent controller. Why the hell are the sticks on the top? I don't like that. I think it's stupid. So that's kind of my main problem. This isn't a make it or break it. I do think this is a fantastic controller, but this element, this one little element of both sticks being on the top, I don't like it. It's not horrible. It's just really awkward. So this is the exact same design as the Wii U gamepad, but I don't have a problem with the sticks being on top here because it's such an unconventional design. And the way it works, I just feel like going to the buttons down here or using the stick along with the buttons feels perfectly fine because of the shape and size of this thing. Your thumb pretty much has to reach the exact same to go between the buttons like this or the analog sticks. On the Pro controller, the buttons and D-pad are so in the middle here that it's just a little weird feeling, not only having the buttons and D-pad so close to the bottom here in this orientation where the two sticks are at the top. I feel like the secondary analog stick just always kind of belongs down here. I feel like right here is more for like a secondary thing on the controller, whereas the buttons, every game's gonna use these buttons. I think these belong up here. Whether it's the PlayStation design or the Xbox design, they all have the buttons up here, and I just like that format a lot more. I think this format's fine, but it's definitely more so this way to be different rather than, oh, this makes sense. But at the end of the day, I think I'd be a fool to say this isn't a good controller. I do like this controller, you know, playing around with it, it feels really nice. But this one element, it's just fun for me to rag on, you know? Most Wii U games you'd care about support this thing, though not all of them do. It's not as widely supported as the Nintendo Switch Pro Controller. That damn thing is pretty much like any game you'd expect supports it. You don't even have to think about it. You don't even have to be like, oh, finally, a game that supports the Nintendo Switch Pro Controller. The Wii U Pro Controller was still a bit of like a little of a boutique novelty item. Oh man, maybe I'll get this if I'm a professional. Now, the Nintendo Switch Pro Controller is just a standardized controller on the Switch, which it's hard to remember a time when that wasn't the case, when your Pro controllers were kind of just a novelty. But now on Switch, it's just like a completely standardized thing. It includes all the features you'd really need in that controller, such as NFC support, motion control. The battery life, it's not as good as the Wii U Pro Controller, but it's still excellent. So there's really not a lot that I think the Wii U Pro Controller does necessarily better than the Nintendo Switch Pro Controller, but it was a necessary step to take to get to this point. I salute you, Wii U Pro Controller. You were a good companion during the Wii U era. I might not have used you for every game, but when I did, my thumbs extended a little bit.